Gentry Estes writes for the Tennessean. They beat Alabama. We went through all the historical facts and all the history and then even the goalpost and more. Gentry joins Craig Paul. I'm David Smoke. Gentry, thank you very much. I know Nashville is an entertainment city, and they have a lot of big events that occur. How would you compare Saturday night with that win against Alabama to anything else you see in Nashville?
Well, I mean, you're right. There is a lot of big events here. I mean, they've had a few big moments and some big sports moments here in the time I've been here. Well, I would say this time was different because it was the first time that Vanderbilt football was front and center and kind of got the attention of the whole city. I mean, if anyone knows how Nashville is laid out, the journey those goalposts took out of the stadium, going down Broadway into the lower Broadway into kind of the touristy district right by Bridgestone Arena. That's not a short journey. They went pretty far down the street there. It's almost like a parade going into the city. And I can promise you there are probably some people in lower Broad that had no idea what was going on and why there was a goalpost coming through. But that was the first. You know, I would say all day today, seems like every conversation I've had for the last 48 hours, it's been about that game. And I can't remember a time that Vanderbilt football was getting that kind of attention.
Clark Lea said something when he got hired that he expected Vanderbilt to be the best football program in America. Now, while they're still far off from that, everybody kind of ridiculed him. Does this give him some of that credibility that he believed in himself, he believed in the program, he believed in the potential of the program, and he just needed some time to do it?
Maybe to an extent, and he referenced that after the game on Saturday, and it's kind of easy, I guess. And he admitted, it's kind of easy to say that, but I would say I don't think he said he expected to be, but the goal was to make that, the best program in the country. And it was a bold statement for any Vanderbilt coach to say that. And I said at the time, I think a lot of, what he meant by that was, you're including the academic piece and some other aspects, and winning at life kind of thing, but I do, certainly understand why people would snicker when Vanderbilt says things that Vanderbilt's football certainly isn't supposed to say. And I feel like to get a win like this certainly does validate a lot of the things that Clark has been doing with that program, just because, they had a couple of SEC wins a couple of seasons ago, but other than that, there really hasn't been a lot during his 3 years there to cheer about. And it seems like this season they figured some things out. They made a lot of changes this last offseason. They brought in new coaches, new players. There was a pretty substantial turnover in terms of the roster, guys leaving to the portal, and who they brought in, and the roles for the players they brought in. In a lot of ways, it was kind of a new team, and the coaching staff was kind of rebuilt as well. And there were so many changes. You kind of came into the season not really knowing what to expect, and then they go out the first game and beat Virginia Tech. So I think a lot of the country today is kind of shocked by what Vanderbilt was able to do against Alabama. And look, it is shocking. I don't think anybody showed up in that stadium on Saturday expecting the result that we got. But at the same time, Vanderbilt had already kind of shown this season that they were a feisty team. They were a good bit better. And I told people last week I thought Alabama was going to win the game, obviously, but I also felt like there was a chance Alabama was going to come out flat after the game they played against Georgia. And I told people then, I said, Vanderbilt's the kind of team that if they do come out flat and they kind of let them hang around, they have the ability to make things difficult for Alabama. And, Vanderbilt they had kind of already shown they were that kind of team this year.
When did the crowd start to buy in? Like, what was that atmosphere like on Saturday? It's funny. You see the construction in the background going on and stuff like that, but a place not known for its home field advantage necessarily, but by the end, I mean, just total chaos. Just kind of how did that ebb and flow, and when do you think that people kind of got the sense like, oh, wait a second, like this might be that day?
Yeah, most of the crowd was Alabama fans, to
Okay.
be honest. And it usually has been that way. I mean, the clip of Nick Saban from a couple of weeks ago saying that every place to play in the SEC is difficult except Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt, you have more fans there than they do, and it's true. It is. And it was certainly the case on Saturday. I think, if anything, it may have worked against Alabama a little bit because I feel like the more that game went on, the more realistic it seemed that this could happen. And, the more I think you see that with home teams sometimes when a big upset could be happening, when a whole place gets nervous and you can kind of feel the tension. It was a little bit like that.
How does this help their recruiting now? Look, they recruit from a smaller pool than most of the teams in the SEC because of the academic standards, but like Notre Dame or other places, like Northwestern, Vanderbilt has a bar you have to hit that other schools don't. But does this help them get maybe a bigger corner on the smart kids?
It can't hurt, I guess, but it also can't hurt that they put a lot more into NIL this last year. I think that's a big deal. They were kind of behind on that in a lot of sports. The basketball coach said it too, and I think Vanderbilt's made more of a commitment in terms of NIL. And obviously, you referenced the construction of the stadium. I feel like the facilities were pretty far behind for a long time. They've done a lot of work in terms of trying to get the facilities up, and it's ongoing work to try to get the facilities going. So I feel like Vanderbilt's been trying a little more here the last couple of years, and when it comes to just investing the resources needed to be successful in college football right now, I think that's really what it's going to come down to.
I'd actually watched a good bit of Diego Pavia because of an award I work with, and just kind of seeing his stats and highlights and whatnot, catching games every week. He was a very entertaining player. Didn't know how it would translate necessarily over to Vanderbilt, but man, what an electric factory, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he's been able to come in and kind of transform this team, and heck of a player. I'm not sure if he's a pro, but I feel like in terms of just being a college quarterback, I mean, Pavia is exactly what you would want for. He's kind of that gritty underdog, chip on his shoulder, so to speak, and he's kind of rubbed off on the rest of Vanderbilt's team, and you could get the sense even back in the preseason what his leadership was meaning to this group. And he comes in along with his head coach and his offensive coordinator that he had last season at New Mexico State. That's a huge advantage. Eli Sowers was getting Eli Sowers had a good game on Saturday too. That's another player from New Mexico State. They were able to bring in, essentially co-opt New Mexico State's program. I mean, they ended up getting Jerry Kill and Tim Beck both in here. There were other coaches that joined them. There were other players that joined, and people in the SEC knew who these people were because New Mexico State went to Auburn and beat them last year. And you kind of got the sense, not only are you bringing in these key guys, but you're bringing them in with the coaches they already had, with a system they were already running in a comfortable situation. I think that's been a big deal for them.
I tell you what, when I watched the game, and I kind of watched the scores initially because I was watching something else too, and then I started watching the game. They doubled Alabama in rushing yards, 42-18 in time of possession, which has a lot to do with the fact that they ran 54 times, I think, compared to 21. There was nothing about this game, Gentry, that was a fluke, and there was nothing weird that happened like a fumble return for a touchdown. This was straight up Vanderbilt was better on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think anybody that watched the game would show this was not an accident. I mean, they absolutely beat Alabama on the lines of scrimmage, which is not anything I would have ever expected to see. I mean, Vanderbilt's transformation there has been substantial, and they have a kind of offense that if you let them get into comfortable down and distance situations, third and short, that kind of thing, they will keep the ball on you forever. They will run the play clock down. They want to be able to kill off the game. It played right into Vanderbilt's hands how that game went on Saturday because Vanderbilt was able to get a 13-0 lead right out of the gate, and they were able to, I think, hold the ball something like 10 minutes on their second touchdown drive, which actually made it 20-7, I believe, because Alabama made a stupid penalty where they had two guys out on the field wearing both having the number 2 jersey, and they got flagged for it on a 4th and 4, and the 5 yards gave Vanderbilt a first down, and they were able to end up taking 10 minutes off the clock with a touchdown drive. That game started out that way. You had Vanderbilt coming off a bye week. You had Alabama who had just played an absolute war against Georgia the week before, and you could just see it set up perfectly for Vanderbilt the way the game went, that they would have more in the fourth quarter, and that's how it ended up going. When you have 42 minutes of possession time, that's usually how that goes.
Gentry, a couple of Texans on the offensive side for the Commodores had big games. Cedric Alexander, also Eli Stowers. I know, it's kind of well documented. He was a quarterback at A&M and now a tight end, but a big performance by him. Just kind of what have you seen maybe from those guys in terms of their impact Saturday, but just in also terms of kind of changing this shift towards, brighter days for Vanderbilt football?
You mean those guys like the New Mexico State transfers?
Like Eli Stowers and Cedric Alexander.
I mean, Cedric Alexander's a good player. He was a good player last year. I feel like they were able to retain some key guys. He was one of them. I think C.J. Taylor on defense has been one of them. A guy named Raymond Fontenette was a transfer from TCU. I think he's a pro. He's a guy they've added to the secondary. He's been a really good player. They did add a lot of talent this last year who's really been able to help them.
By the way, I sent an email to the media relations director at Vanderbilt, knowing that he probably got inundated with all sorts of different requests for Clark Lea. But I did mention that I did see 12 players from the state of Texas on their roster.
Yeah, they got good contributions from guys like Stowers and Alexander, which was what I was getting at there on the Vanderbilt roster. So, yeah, they got pretty deep run there. Yeah,
from the guys from the state of Texas as well. All right, Gentry, thanks for your time. How much do you think it's just nice that when people say back in the day it was Northwestern or K-State or lately KU, but not last year, maybe again, I don't know. But it's like, they'll beat Vanderbilt. That is off the table. I don't know what they're going to do the rest of the year, but they're no longer the butt of anybody's jokes.
Certainly not this season. Certainly not. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, people are kind of treating this as, the historic lifetime achievement kind of thing for Vanderbilt. And look, you beat the number one team in the country. They'd never beaten a top 5 team before, so that's understandable. But I think you kind of see this is a pretty good team. I mean, Texas has to come in the stadium in a few weeks. Tennessee has to play Vanderbilt. I mean, we'll see what happens here. This could go one of two ways. Vanderbilt could take their foot off the gas. They go to Kentucky next. They can take that's certainly a tough game. They can take their foot off the gas and not play well, and all of a sudden they lose all momentum. Or this could be the kind of thing where you got an entire program that's been told repeatedly how they shouldn't be able to do these things. I mean, you just go beat the number one team in the country, and anything seems possible. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, Gentry, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Gentry Estes from the Tennessean, columnist on the weekend it was in Nashville. First time, as he mentioned, with all of the glitz and the glamour, the bright lights, and all the events that they host, including NFL and much more, that Vanderbilt was the topic, center stage.